So good afternoon, all of you. Okay, hopefully I'm properly audible and loud and clear. So in previous session, we guys were discussing about the process related to the hypothesis testing. Now we guys are clear with the fundamental related to that, null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, critical region, level of significance, the acceptance region, rejection regions, what is the actual process which we are supposed to follow uh, for any of the test. Test means test for the hypothesis, whether we are going to accept that hypothesis or we are going to reject that hypothesis. So these are the steps which is rightly on your screen. These are the steps which we are supposed to follow during any of the tests. As I said earlier, that the toughest part from this chapter is to decide the test, which test is suitable for the example. That is what the toughest part you need to decide, because we are going for the Z test, that's for the large samples. But in the Z test, we will be having 5 different tests even. Is it a single sample test for the proportion, difference of proportion test for the 2 samples, a single mean for the Z test, difference of mean test, then after difference of standard deviation test. These are the 5 different tests which are applicable for the last sample. And based on the data we are having, we need to decide our test. Once we are clear with the test, we may decide our Z statistic, because look, observe the third step over here. The third step, let me pick my pen from this. Yes, this is the critical stage to decide the test statistic. Third and fourth. First, we will be deciding which test we are going to apply, and then based on that particular, we will decide our test statistic Z. So this is crucial. इस Z के लिए हर एक के लिए कुछ अलग फॉर्मूला होगी, जो आज हम 1 या 2 टेस्ट आज ही देखेंगे. So if we are having 5 different tests, then we will be having 5 different formula related to this test statistic Z. 5 formula होगी हर एक के लिए. For each and every test, that formula will differ. Okay, and once we are having the Z statistic with us, we are going to compare that with the critical value, which is Z alpha. And what are the different values related to Z alpha that we are already having that. कल ही हमने बात की थी, when we had discussed how to decide any of the critical value. Usually we guys going to deal with the 1% or 5% or 10%, but it's not like that कि हर बार यही हो सकता है. We may set a critical value. We may identify the critical value for even 25%. Is it even for the 3.5%?
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Sorry for the disturbance. Sir,
Who's
आपका
that?
वॉइस इको हो रहा है. राज सर, सर आपका वॉइस इको हो रहा है शायद.
There's an echo issue from my side, is it?
Sorry, sir.
There's an echo problem from my side, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Gotcha. Then I need to log out from the other device. Okay. मैं अपने सेल फोन में से लॉग आउट कर रहा हूँ, and in this case echo वाला problem तो solve हो जाएगा, but in that case I will not able to access the comment. Okay, so that okay. I logged out from my cell phone, so echo वाला issue अब नहीं रहेगा शायद. But in this case, in this particular scenario, I will not able to access your comment. I will not able to access our chat box of this particular meeting. So if you're having any query, any doubt, then you will be unmuting yourself and will be talking to me. Okay. So this is an instruction for all of you. None of you will drop any of the comment on the chat box right now. You guys will drop a message and you guys will unmute yourself and will talk to me if you're having any query, any doubt in the session. Raj, देख ले अब I don't think so now there is any issue related to echo. अब नहीं होगा शायद देख ले.
नहीं सर, अब ठीक हो गया सर, अब ठीक हो गया.
It's okay. That was just due to my cell phone because I had logged in from two different devices. Or cell phone मेरे पास नहीं पड़ा था. That was the issue.
ओके
Okay,
सर.
so let me continue further. So we may decide once we are having that value of z, we are going to compare that with z alpha, that critical value, and if that critical value is less than, if our z statistic value is less than z alpha, less than the critical value, then we are going to accept the null hypothesis. In other case, we are going to reject the null hypothesis. So this is what the process is we are supposed to follow. Now, let me give you the first test, and level of this is the test of significance for the single proportion. And this test is applicable for the large sample. That means a sample which is having number of elements which is greater than 30. Okay, so we are going for the single proportion test, and all this belongs to Z test. कैसे करेंगे? चलिए, large sample है, क्या करना होगा? What will be the process? So first, I am giving you the theoretical portion of that. We will be having a proportion of sample as well as proportion of population. So we will be using different notations for both of that. Let small p be the sample proportion. Abhi, we guys are a little bit clear with the thing we are having, that we are going to deal with one of the population as well as a sample. अभी एक ही सैंपल से बात हो रही है. अभी सिंगल प्रोपोर्शन देखिए यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है, दैट इज अ सिंगल प्रोपोर्शन. दैट मींस वी आर डीलिंग विद द सिंगल सैंपल. ओके, सो we are having one of the population. Suppose this is a population, and we are going to deal with the single sample of that. This is a sample. So the proportion related to sample will be labeled as a small p. Proportion related to population will be labeled as capital P. Okay. Yes, Nidhi. Someone raised her hand. Nidhi, you raised your hand, is it? As I said that I will not able to entertain any of the comment. Okay, that was by mistake. Okay. I can just hear the notification sound when you are raising or dropping any of the message on the chat box. So I will not, as I said, I will not able to access any of your comment. If you're having any doubt, you will feel free to talk with me. Unmute yourself between any moment of the session, and we will try to resolve your queries. Okay, so let small p the sample proportion in a large random sample of size n. So ये जो sample की हम बात करें उसकी size n, उसका level n, उसका proportion small p, drawn from a population having a proportion p. So population का proportion, that is capital P, and also the population proportion capital P has some of the specific value. Sample proportion, sorry, the population proportion will have some of the specific value. वो बोला गया होगा कि जैसे कि हमने last example में बोला था that the average mean average value of the weight of student of MU University is 55 kg. Is it? That was a data related to the mean. But likewise, we will have some of the specified value related to the proportion of population that we're gonna label with the capital P naught. Capital P is a proportion for the population. So उसके लिए कुछ एक value specify की होगी, that P naught will be a constant. Suppose might be that P naught is 0.7, 0.3, like that, because we are dealing with the proportion, so it will be a number between 0 to 1. Okay, so we will have some of the proportion population proportion value, and we're gonna label that with P naught. So what we are supposed to do in this particular test, what is the working rule? First, we will set the null hypothesis. We will accept that particular specified value for the population proportion, that yes, assume that P is equals to P. So that means population proportion P has that specified value. That will be a null hypothesis. And then based on that, we will set an alternative hypothesis. Now, our alternative hypothesis might be, हो सकता है that alternative hypothesis is one directional. Yeah, so it might be two directional. When I'm saying it's one directional, that means I'm talking about a one tail test. It might be left tail test or right tail test. Is it? If P is less than P naught, that means we are dealing with the left tail test. If P is greater than P naught, sorry, then we are dealing with the right tail test. If P is less than P naught, we are dealing with the left tail test. And if P is not equal to P zero, that means we are dealing with the two tail test. Is it? So that will depend on the situation, that we cannot decide it right now कि कौन सी इन तीनों में से कौन सी हम alternative hypothesis लेंगे. That we need to decide using the data we are having. Okay, so we will be setting alternative hypothesis as well as null hypothesis. Then level of significance will be provided in the question. Yes, this is the important thing for the first question, for the first test. Observe, the test is for the single proportion, and for the large sample, the Z statistic. Observe, as I said, that I will provide you the different formula for the Z statistic for each and every test. As I said, this will be the general formula. T, estimated value of T divided by its standard error related to that particular parameter. Here T is a labeling for the parameter, and we are dealing with the proportion. So proportion is a parameter. So in this case, a Z will have the formula sample proportion minus population proportion divided by its standard error, that will be P into capital Q divided by small n, where n is a sample size. Now ये small p क्या हमको पता है, this relates to sample proportion, that capital P is population proportion, and what is that Q? That Q is nothing but, that capital Q is nothing but 1 minus P, 1 minus capital P. Now the P is population proportion. Okay, so take care for this. You need to remember this formula for this test. You need to remember this formula as well as this value. What is Q? Q is 1 minus P. That's all. If you are good with this, then surely you will. ये formula आपको याद होनी चाहिए statistic की, and आपको critical value सारी याद होनी चाहिए Z alpha की. ठीक है? Then is पूरे portion, then it will be quite easy for you guys. Okay. And after that, critical value. Find the critical value. Or I can say जो मैंने आपको table दिया हुआ है, the tabular value Z alpha of Z at given level of significance. We will decide what is the value of Z alpha, and then we will have a decision that if the absolute value of Z is less than Z alpha, then at the level of significance alpha, then we will go for acceptance, that null hypothesis is accepted. Another case will reject the null hypothesis. It will be not that कोई भी क्वेश्चन में ऐसा नहीं होगा, if there is a question in your mind, that's what we need to conclude if Z is equals to Z alpha. ऐसा नहीं होने वाला, कभी नहीं होने वाला. Okay, so don't worry about that. Either that Z will be less than Z alpha, or that Z will be greater than Z alpha. Okay, if this is the case, then we are going to accept. If this is the case, we are going to reject. Okay, I would like to add two more things over there. As we discuss about the confidence interval, here I will also provide the confidence interval formula, how we can set a confidence interval for this particular single proportion test. So वो भी बात करते चलिए पहले. For what is first, the null hypothesis H naught is rejected when Z, as that statistic is greater than 3. Why? Now observe this first knot. We will directly go for the rejection of the null hypothesis if my Z statistic value is greater than 3. अगर वो Z statistic की वैल्यू 3 से बड़ी आई, तो मैं उसको किसी के साथ कंपेयर भी नहीं करूंगा. I will directly, straightforward reject that null hypothesis. May I ask why? ऐसा क्यों मैंने ऐसा लिखा हुआ है? कोई बोल सकता है मुझे? Can anyone reply on that? Quickly. Nidhi, Bharti, Pavdeep, Rishabh, any of you?
सर नॉर्मल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की लिमिट 3 तक होती है.
क्या बात है, कौन बोल रहा है? Who's that?
भारती.
Yes, Bharti, you're absolutely correct. As we know that if we are dealing with the normal distribution, that means normal curve, then 3 to 3 minus 3 to 3. In that particular portion, we are already 99 point some of the first, and 99.42% of data will be included in that. And if our Z statistic is greater than 3, absolute value of Z statistic is greater than 3, that means वो -3 से कम है या तो फिर वो +3 से ज्यादा है, तो बात खत्म ही है, वो रिजेक्शन एरिया में ही है. Is it? सो अगर z स्टेटिस्टिक की वैल्यू 3 से बड़ी आई, कभी कभी अगर आ रही है, देन वी विल नॉट वरीड अबाउट एनी ऑफ द दैट पर्टिकुलर सिग्निफिकेंट वैल्यू, कि वो z अल्फा की वैल्यू क्या है, क्रिटिकल वैल्यू को की परवाह ही नहीं करेंगे. वी विल स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड रिजेक्ट दैट. ओके, सो आई कैन सेट 1 or 2 MCQ based on this. Okay, take care. Second, this is important, how we can set our confidence limit or how we can derive our confidence interval. Confidence interval wali baat. Now, in this case, if we want to set a confidence interval up to 95 percentage, up to 95 percentage confidence interval like set करना है, या तो if we wish to go for 90 percentage, or I may write down even for the 90%, but वो मैंने आपके लिए रखा है. You will वो आप बताएंगे, पर वो क्या होगा देखिए, P, that is a sample proportion plus or minus 1.96 under root of that. That is what. If you can observe, then what is this? This is actually the standard error. If I refer the last slide, observe here in the denominator. As I said, that this is the general formula for the Z statistic, and उसमें मैंने बोल के रखा था कि डिनोमीटर में जो होता है वो हम यूज करेंगे स्टैंडर्ड एरर, स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन. जो स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन है वही है स्टैंडर्ड एरर. वो जो स्टैंडर्ड एरर है उसके पहले जब मैंने कॉन्फिडेंस इंटरवल आपको रिवील किया था, व्हेन वी वर डिस्कसिंग अबाउट द कॉन्फिडेंस इंटरवल, देन आई हैड सेड अबाउट दैट के स्टैटिस्टिक, वो सैंपल का स्टैटिस्टिक्स प्लस और माइनस स्टैंडर्ड एरर, वो प्लस और माइनस वो एरर करेंगे. ठीक है, सो दैट इज द रीजन. इसका डिनोमीटर देखिए वही है, अंडर रूट ऑफ स्क्वायर रूट ऑफ पी इंटू क्यू डिवाइड बाय, वही आएगा इस फॉर्मूला में हर बार. सो सिंपली आप ऐसे याद रख सकते हैं कॉन्फिडेंस इंटरवल फॉर्मूला, जो जी स्टैटिस्टिक का डिनोमीटर होगा ना वही आएगा यहाँ पे, और उसके साथ जो मल्टीप्लिकेशन है वो देखिए, फॉर द 99% 95% कॉन्फिडेंस लिमिट, व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट 95% कॉन्फिडेंस इंटरवल, तो यहाँ पे जो मैंने लिमिट यूज की है देखिए, ये भी एक बार 1.96. अब दिस बिलोंग्स टू टू टेल टेस्ट. 99% 95% में जो टू टेल टेस्ट का क्रिटिकल वैल्यू है वो है यहाँ पे. let me show you that. वो भी एक बार दिखा दूं, क्या था वो 95% वाला. wait, where it is, यहाँ पे next slide में. Yes, observe this. For 95%, that means 5% level of significance, जो टू टेल टेस्ट के लिए जो वैल्यू है that is 1.96, that will be over there. Confidence limit का फॉर्मूला कैसा बना, T plus or minus 1.96 into standard error. The standard error in that particular case was capital P into Q divided by N. Now, if I'm gonna, as I said that these are the confidence limit, that means वो एक right hand side का एक पॉइंट हम फाइंड करें, एक लेफ्ट हैंड साइड का पॉइंट फाइंड करें. इफ आई विश टू रिप्रेजेंट दैट पर्टिकुलर इन द इंटरवल, तो कैसे लिख सकते हैं, ऐसे लिख सकते हैं P minus 1.96 under root of PQ divided by N, comma P small p plus 1.96 under root of P into Q divided by N. So this interval, this particular interval, this interval is my 95% confidence interval in this case, in this particular test, which is single proportion test, is it? So देखिए proportion, वो statistic क्या है, that standard error is here, and here is the level of significance. Now, as I said that we are dealing with we are trying to find the confidence interval, then surely we need to deal with both the ends, both the direction. That is the reason why I'm using that say critical values of two tail test. अब इसी के लिए, अब चलिए आप में से कोई बताएगा मुझे, instead of dealing with 95% confidence interval, if I wish to derive the confidence limit for 99%, for 99%, तो इस फॉर्मूला में कहां पे फर्क आएगा, ये 95% के लिए है. ठीक है, अब 99% के लिए कॉन्फिडेंस इंटरवल अगर मुझे कॉन्फिडेंस लिमिट्स मुझे बनानी है, डिराइव करनी है, तो फॉर्मूला क्या होगा, चलिए कोई एक अनम्यूट कीजिए अपने आप को एंड जल्दी से बता दीजिए. आई एम वेटिंग 99% कॉन्फिडेंस इंटरवल.
Sir, instead of
बता
sir,
दे.
instead of one
Small p
sir,
plus or
instead of
minus.
one point, yes
Yes,
sir.
yes. yes, बता, आगे बढ़, instead of 1.96,
We will take 2.58.
2.58, and rest of the things will be same, p into q divided by n, is it? If you wish to represent that particular in the interval, तो भी आप लिख सकते हैं, interval p minus वही value 2.58 under root of that, comma p plus that value, is it? Now, are you comfortable with 90% confidence interval? अगर मुझे 90% confidence interval बनाना है, तो वैल्यू क्या रहेगी? ये 1.96 है, उसको हमने रिप्लेस किया 2.58 से when we were trying to identify 99%. अब अगर 90% दिखाना है, 90% कॉन्फिडेंस इंटरवल जनरेट करें, तो वैल्यू क्या लेंगे हम? 1.65645. Is it? Are we good? Are we good with this? Drop a message on the chat box right now. I'm accessing your chat right now. Please, all those who are attending the session, please drop a message on the chat box. समझ में आ रही बात कि नहीं आ रही? जो भी मैं बात कर रहा हूँ, जल्दी से all those who are present here will drop a message on the chat box. क्या समझ में आया कि नहीं? ठीक है, चलो सभी को समझ में आया. Once again, I'm on the screen. I'm on the PPT. क्या मेरी PPT दिखाई दे रही है अभी? I'm not able to access it from the other slide. Okay, PPT दिखाई दे रही है कि नहीं दे रही है?
Yes, sir.
Good. So let me quickly go through that reach over there. जो हम बात कर रहे थे. So this is a test statistic, and this is the formula for the confidence interval. This is for 99%. ऐसे ही आप बना सकते हैं 90% के लिए, वो मैंने अभी यहाँ पे नहीं लिखा है, पर उसमें कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है, is it? And if the population proportion P and Q are not known, अगर population proportion नहीं दिया हुआ, then P and Q are used in the equation. Then small p and q are also applicable. उस पे हम small p और q को भी इंट्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं. कैसे, वो मैं अभी एग्जांपल में दिखाऊंगा. रुक जाइए, चलिए. This is our first example. Now we guys are loaded to deal with our first example related to the first test. And what it says, a manufacturer claimed that at least 95% of the equipment which he supplied to the factory conform to the specification. Manufacturer claims that at least 95% of the equipment which he supplied to the factory conform to the specification. An examination of a sample. अब ये examination कौन करेगा? That factory owner. Examination of sample 200 pieces of the equipment revealed that 18 were faulty. Now, what that factory owner is doing, he is not having trust on the manufacturer. He's trying to test that whether the manufacturer is claiming correct or not. So what he is doing, he is having a delivery of 200 pieces of one of the equipment. He's checking all that, is testing all that, and found that 18 are faulty. 18 were faulty. Out of 200, 18 were faulty. Now, we need to check whether the claim, this claim, which is the claim right now, claim is this, that claim is given by the manufacturer that 95%, at least, come se kam 95% of the equipment are tested okay. And out of 200, we are having 18 faulty. Out of 200, 18 faulty, that means 200 में से 18 अगर मैं निकाल दूं, then it will be 182. 182 are the defective out of 200, and we need to check whether this particular claim is correct or not. And in that particular claim, that is provided that we are supposed to test this particular at 5% level of significance. So this is what the question is now. First of all, let me know by unmuting yourself whether you are able to understand the question or not. क्या आपको question समझ में आ रहा है? जो भी बच्चे present है, question समझ में आ रहा है? Let me.
Yes, sir.
Good. So I'm assuming that all of you are getting the question properly. Now, what we can do in this? Do we have any proportion over here? No, we are not having any proportion. Yes, we have. Observe here. In the claim, they had given that 95% of the equipment is tested okay. So this is the proportion. अब ये बताइए क्या ये sample proportion होगा, ये population proportion है? बताइए मुझे.
Population proportion, sir.
Yes, it is population proportion, and we are having one of the prefix value of the population proportion. So we will set a null hypothesis as p equals to 95%. Now, first of all, by observing this particular question, we must be clear, one must be clear that which of the parameter is provided. So here the proportion is provided. So we will go for proportional test. After deciding that we are having proportion, we need to decide whether we are having one sample or two sample. बहुत clear है. We are having just a single sample of 2000 pieces. So using both this data, we may conclude that we are having one sample, single sample. उस sample में the sample size is 200, which is greater than 30. That means we are dealing with the large sample. Large sample test apply होगा. Large sample test में मेरे पास एक ही sample है and we are having the information of proportion. So क्या होगा? Single proportion test. This is applicable. So this is the way you can decide your test in any of the example. So you need to deal like this. कितनी बात आपको ध्यान में रखनी है, कितने number of sample कितने, एक ही है. Sample size क्या है? अभी के लिए 200 है. That means it is greater than 30. So it is a large sample, and we are having a data, we are having a statistic, we are having information related to one of the statistic, and that statistic is proportion. So single proportion test will be applicable. Now, once we are clear with the single proportion test, हमको क्या पता होना चाहिए? The level of significance. It is clearly mentioned over there. The level of significance is 5%. So the value of alpha is neat and clean. Then after, the value of sample size is also provided, that is 200. We must have two values related to the proportion, one of the proportion for the population, and we must have the proportion for the sample. So the proportion for the population, it is provided, that is 95%. So that means it will be 0.95. If I'm going to convert that particular percentage into fraction, then it will be 0.95, and we must have the proportion related to sample. अब ये ध्यान में रखना है, proportion related to sample, that is not provided. We are going to identify that proportion related to sample as it said that out of 200, 18 are faulty. So we can simply calculate that if 200 is 100%, then 18 will be how many percentage? It is somewhere about 9%, is it? Or this 95% is for the tested okay material, is it? So we may go for, if I'm setting that P related to the faulty material, then that capital P is also related to faulty material. But this capital P is related to the tested okay material, that means good material. So this small p must be the same data. So I need to identify the number of good items out of that 200, then 200 minus 18, so it will be 182. And I need to identify the 182 is what percentage of 200. 182 is what percentage of 200. It is quite easy, 182 divided by 200. So that fraction will give me the proportion related to sample. That's it. And once we are having the proportion related to population, once we are having the proportion related to sample, we are good to go. That's it. So this is the way you can identify. If you are clear with this particular thing, all these things, then it will be very easy task for any of you, whether you are D2D student or you are regular student. Let me explain one more time to all of you. In this particular example, we are having 95%. We are having a claim that a manufacturer claims that 95% of the equipment are good. So that is a proportion related to population. So we are going to set capital P as a 95%. Then we need to decide the test that we are having a single sample only. That single sample is having a size of 200, which is greater than 30. So we are dealing with a large sample. We are having just single sample. So एक ही sample, large sample, one sample, as well as that sample is large, as well as we are having one of the statistic data, that is proportion. हमारे पास जो data है वो proportion का है. So large sample में proportion वाला case, तो वो क्या होगा? Single proportion test, is it? So this is the way you can decide your test. Now drop a message on the chat box. I'm accessing your chat box. Are you able to get this? क्या इतनी बात समझ में आई? If you are good with this, तो अभी मैं आपको solution दिखा दूं, कोई बड़ी बात नहीं. अभी एक ही confusion आपके दिमाग में होगा, वो क्या हम single tail test use करेंगे या two tail test? Good. Now let me resolve this thing from the slide and let me give you some of the view of the. यहाँ तक देख लीजिए एक बार. We are having a sample of 200, so the value of n will be 200, small n. This is the sample size. The number of pieces conform to specification, that is 200 minus 18, that means 182. That is tested okay material from that sample, 182. Using that 182, I can easily get the proportion related to sample. Now, what is P small p? Sample proportion of pieces conform to the specification, that is 182 divided by 200, that will be 0.91. Capital P, which is actually provided, population proportion of pieces conforming to the specification, that is 0.95. This is the provided data. Is it? ये भी इनडायरेक्टली दिया हुआ था, हमने आइडेंटिफाई किया. अब यहाँ से लग ही रहा है, देखिए वो बोल रहा है कि 95%. देखिए एक सिंपल सिंपल सा डाउट आपके दिमाग में होगा, सर वो बोल रहा था कि 95% तो प्रॉपर ही आते हैं. Manufacturer claims that 95% of the equipment is perfect, tested okay, and when we are testing, then we are having just 0.91% material which is okay. So यहाँ पे आप you can conclude easily this claim is wrong, is it ना? This claim is perfectly wrong. इस sample के लिए तो गलत ही है. But तो कंफ्यूजन कहाँ है सर? वी आर गुड. यहाँ पे ही क्वेश्चन खत्म हो रहा है. बट नहीं, दिस इज नॉट द थिंग व्हिच वी आर डूइंग. वी आर हैविंग वन ऑफ द फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी ऑफ 5% एरर. ऑब्जर्व हियर, वी नीड टू टेस्ट दिस पर्टिकुलर क्लेम अप टू 5% लेवल ऑफ सिग्निफिकेंस. ये जो फिगर उसने बोला है ना 0.95, उसमें अगर वो 5% गलती करता है ना तो भी दैट इज अलाउड. So quite possible that 0.91, thus a sample with the proportion 0.91 will be accepted, or we may reject that. That will be purely depend on the Z and Z alpha. So we need to decide a Z over there. So let's try to identify Z score. Now the formula for the Z score we are going to use, that is P minus capital P divided by under root of P into Q divided by N. Is it? This is the formula for the single proportion test, as we had just discussed before this particular slide. So we are going to deal with this. अब query यहाँ पे ये 5% accept होगा कि नहीं होगा. So let's try to set some of the basic fundamental. Once we are good with all this, that small p क्या है, capital P क्या है, ये हमको पता है. Once we are having capital P value, we need to identify Q, that is Q is 1 minus P, so it is 1 minus 0.95, it will be 0.05. What is null hypothesis? We need to set null hypothesis which is provided in the data. That manufacturer claims that at least 95%. So we are setting P is equals to 95%. P is equals to 95%. Proportion of the pieces conform to the specification is at least 95%. At least I can set this P is greater than 0.95. Is it? Even I can set P is greater than 0.95. So this is my null hypothesis. P is greater than 0.95. Now we need to set a alternative hypothesis. Now what is alternative hypothesis? Alternative hypothesis is actually opposite to the mathematical opposite to the null hypothesis. If my P is greater than 0.95, then my alternative hypothesis H1 will be P is less than 0.95. So if we are setting an alternative hypothesis P as less than 0.95, that means we are dealing with the single tail test. P is less than, that means we are dealing on the left hand side. We are interested in the left hand side. So we are going to deal with the single tail test. अब सिंगल टेल टेस्ट में मैंने आपको दो अलग अलग रोज दे रखी है उस टेबल में. But as I said that we are not gonna worry for the negative values because we are always gonna deal with the absolute value of the Z. Okay, so it will be totally okay whether we are dealing with the left tail or right tail, but the Z value will be compared with the three values only. Okay, so this is a null hypothesis, this is a alternative hypothesis. Now let's try to calculate P over there. Sorry, the Z statistic over there, Z score. As well as we know that level of significance is 5%, that means alpha will be 0.05, and the stats that statistic count करते चलिए. As I said, the formula will be P minus capital P divided by root of P into Q divided by N. Now we are having all that value P capital P or P into Q divided by N की value है. When I'm using my calc over there, it gives me minus 2.59. Minus 2.59. Now, this z-score is negative. Why? Because we are dealing with the left tilt test. We are totally good with this particular. Negative sign से कोई फर्क नहीं है, हमको कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. Is it? Instead of dealing with that particular negative, we will be dealing with the absolute value of z. Now, but if this is my z-score, let me pick my pen. If this is my z-score, then the absolute value of z will be absolute value of minus 2.59. That means, sorry, absolute value. That means that z score is 2.59. Now we are at the stage where we will compare a z statistic with the critical value. So our level of significance alpha is 5%. So I must have the z score critical value up at 5%, 0.05. Is it? That means indirectly I can say that up to 95%. Is it? So कुछ भी लिख सकते हैं यहाँ पे. These are just the different notation, but we must have that particular value. So can any of you will give me the 5% significance value for the z? क्रिटिकल वैल्यू दे सकता है कोई मुझे 5% के लिए? चलिए जल्दी से इन द सिंगल टेल टेस्ट क्या था वो जल्दी से देख के आइए. कोई एक बता दीजिए मुझे जल्दी से. जैसे कल हम आप लोगों ने स्क्रीनशॉट लिया था उसका. इज इट ना? What will be the value of z alpha for 5% in the single one tail test? जल्दी से जल्दी से जल्दी से जल्दी से, या फिर मैं दिखा दूं. हेलो, I'm waiting. Am I audible properly?
Sir, 1.96.
1.96, is it? So I need to compare this particular value with 1.96. Are you saying that?
Yes, sir.
1.96 आपने किस में देखा बेटा? सिंगल वन साइडेड टेस्ट में देखा या टू साइडेड टेस्ट में देखा?
Sorry, sir, it is two-tailed test.
Yes, and we are dealing with the single tail test. So 5% level of significance, then the critical value will be 1.645. Is it?
1.645. Yes, sir. Yes.
Now we just need to compare both this. हम इन दोनों को compare करेंगे, and we will come to our decision. Since we can easily see that absolute value of this test statistic is greater than 1.645, greater than that particular critical value. So अगर ये greater than है, तो हमको पता है क्या करना है? Reject करना है. Then null hypothesis is rejected. That means what? At 5% level of significance, we are going to reject this particular null hypothesis. Then the conclusion is that the manufacturer's claim is rejected. देखिए एक बड़ी बात ये है कि यहीं से पता चल रहा था. कोई बंदा अगर ऐसा क्वेश्चन पूछे कि सर यहीं से तो मुझे पता चल रहा था कि सैंपल प्रपोर्शन है 0.91 एंड पॉपुलेशन प्रपोर्शन है. वो जो क्लेम कर रहा है बंदा वो बोल रहा है 95%, और हमको पता है कि सैंपल में 91% ही करेक्ट वो अच्छे वाले प्रोडक्ट आए, तो यहीं से मना कर दो ना. बट दैट डिपेंड्स ऑन द लेवल ऑफ सिग्निफिकेंस. इज इट? दैट डिपेंड्स ऑन द लेवल ऑफ सिग्निफिकेंस. अगर हो सकता है अगर इसको मैं 15% लेवल ऑफ सिग्निफिकेंस पे चेक करूं ना तो ये एक्सेप्ट भी हो जाए. ये नल हाइपोथेसिस एक्सेप्ट भी हो सकती है. This null hypothesis we can accept if I'm going to change this level of significance. Instead of 5, if I'm going to test that up to 15%, then surely it will be accepted. If I'm going to test that up to 25% of level of significance, surely it will be accepted over there. So this is the reason we cannot conclude from this particular stage. Okay. So this is the way you can deal with any of the example related to the proportion test for the single sample. Okay. Hopefully we are good with this. Hopefully let me know on the chat box क्या इसमें समझ में आया जो भी हमने बात की. How many of you are getting this properly? Drop a message on the chat box right now. I'm वही देख रहा हूँ मैं, chat box ही देख रहा हूँ. How many of you are getting this properly? क्या बात है, हर कोई बच्चा समझ रहा है. अच्छी बात है भाई. या फिर कोई एक डाल रहा है यस सर, तो बाकी को सभी को यस सर ही कमेंट डालना है, ऐसा तो कुछ नहीं है ना. Let me stop recording over there because We're not going to discuss the next